Welcome everyone to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host, and with me for all of these Skeleton Crew episodes is my co-host, Kyle Gould.
Hello.
We are back for episode 5. You have a lot to learn about pirates.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
it's true.
It's true. And overall, this episode was highly successful for me. I loved it so much. It had all of the shenanigans I was hoping for from this show. And yeah, it worked in so many ways for me.
Yeah. You know that scene in the Last Jedi where they leave the ship that's fleeing the other ship and go to a casino world and have a whole adventure and then come back and the ship is still fleeing the other ship? This felt a lot like that.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
In that, obviously, there are things that need to happen in order to move the plot along.
Mm-hmm.
Revelations needed to be made to ensure that we are fully in understanding of all the things that are being told and talked about in this show. And that was this episode. And so it felt very much like the beginning 15 minutes of the second arc, you know, the second arc of the movie, right? We now know what everything is going on, and now they have to get to the place that they have to get to.
This is the only other time in Star Wars, I believe, that we have visually seen a spa on screen. Because the other time was actually in The Last Jedi on Canto Bites.
Yeah, I was watching a YouTube video. I don't remember who it was because I watched a bunch of them after this episode, just to get a feel for what was going on. Because there's a lot of things happening, and there's so many different types of races that were only ever seen in TLJ.
Yeah.
And that's kind of cool, especially in the Canto Bite.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm happy we are returning to a spa. But first, as we dig into the episode, we start out with a flash or a cut to our adults.
Yeah, which we didn't get last episode.
No.
So I was expecting more of this scene than we got.
Yeah. And both you and I were struck by how much it reminded us of the bureaucracy of Andor.
Mm.
We were like, this feels like Andor, like when he's in the little doing his data work.
Or when the guy's going to, he has to have, cereal at his mom's house and then go to the office.
Yeah,
it felt like that.
It felt very average day situation. But there's this undertone of, how can I describe it? But authoritarian fascism in the feeling of this work that they're doing, because quite literally there's a very scary security droid watching all the time.
At all times, monitoring not only, just the visual, but every version of the spectrum as well. So when a power surge occurs, the droid is bearing witness to that. Because you're not
doing what you're supposed to be doing. It's like, why can't the droids just do this work? Anyways, the weirdness about it is also just the horror aspect of always being monitored, which is actually a very realistic thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you work in an office job, actually everything that you're doing is being monitored by systems behind the scenes.
And the discordant high string music in the background is lending us that air as well. It's telling us, hey, this is not as it appears to be. It all appears to be clean and orderly and precise. But this music is telling you there is more going on underneath the surface.
And these adults are keenly aware of it, even though they don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Right? So that, to me, indicates in the Joseph Campbell sense of the word, the thing that is wrong with their home.
Yeah.
Right? This thing, whatever is behind the scenes, probably the supervisor or the setup of this world or what it's making or how it's making it, and the lives of these people who have one choice, which is become an analyst, become a forensic accountant, become,
right.
Not everybody wants to do those things. Obviously, we see an alternative path in our little heroes.
Yep. But then we also now get to see the adults becoming pirates.
Yes.
Right? They need to be pirates as well.
You need to steal an access code.
Yeah. You need to break in.
Yeah. You need to break in, steal an access code. Here's this. And it's wires.
It's so homespun.
It's homespun. But he's caught.
Yeah.
Because
he's no good at this.
Because he's not very good.
Because what is the title of this episode?
You've got a lot to learn about pirates.
Yeah, Wemble, you've got a lot to learn about pirates.
Yeah. Like, and I loved how it's like, show me your hand, show me your other hand, show me both of your hands.
Yeah.
It felt very like patronizing.
Yes.
And that also sort of indicates something about the world, right? So he turns Wendell in to Fern's mom.
Mm-hmm.
This, the assistant to the supervisor or whatever her title is.
I don't care. Her clothes are just the best.
Oh, it's gorgeous, classic Republic attire.
Yep.
She always looks gorgeous. And immediately she's just like, erase your memory and turn off. And they're all in on it.
Yeah.
Which is great. But they want to help the kids. They want to send a message. And this is all just to send a message.
It's to throw a written piece of paper in a bottle and chuck it out into the ocean.
Yeah.
They're just hoping that it'll reach them on their stranded island.
And what's super interesting about this is that there's this idea of the parents wanting to save the future.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the metaphor that is. They want to be able to save their own future, which is their children. And the work will prevent it.
Yeah.
The capitalism will prevent it. The authority of the society,
the industrial complex,
will prevent it.
Will prevent it because it continues to push down and cut off any extraneous pieces. It doesn't need the industrial complex doesn't need the children.
Exactly. But this is a repetition in Star Wars. We have a lot of the House of Atreus, which is the consumption of the children, i.e. they are lost, but that doesn't matter to the sort of curse of the society, which is what they're facing. And they're like, no, our children, our future do matter.
Well, I mean, so we can look at it from a Theseus and Minos element too, right? I'm seeing that because literally the heir prince, Fern, she has been sent off into space and no one wants, where everybody was fine with if it happened before something occurred and something happened, but it was people who were not of power and privilege. Yeah. They were cut off. Fern being out there means that her mom who has a degree of power, is willing to exert that power for her own personal gain to get her child back.
And it makes me wonder what happened to Wim's mom.
Right? Brought up for the third time. There is power and repetition in this episode, in this show in general.
Yep, absolutely. So we don't get very far with this other than that they're planning on working together more. So I do hope we get another flash to what's going on with the adults.
Yeah.
But
just to end on the adults, it's telling that everything is happening twice. There's two cool things that are happening from a metaphorical perspective as well in this as well. One is that everything's being seen through lenses. Mm-hmm. So we're watching initially Wemble, we're looking at him through the lens that this protocol droid is looking through, the security droid is looking at him through, because he's got his glass divider for his little cubicle. Mm-hmm. And then we're looking at him through his glasses as well. So we've got these two lenses to see him through so that we're given that distance. And then when we flip and we're now talking to Fern's mom, the assistant to the secretary corporate entity,
assistant supervisor?
Assistant to the supervisor.
Yeah.
She is behind her glass window, and in the background is the supervisor's tower.
Yeah.
Right? So the supervisor's tower is always watching the same way in which the security droid was watching.
And she's getting no response from the supervisor, which is, I mean, it's outside of whatever the mandate is.
Yeah. And I'm getting maybe also a touch of the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
You can't talk to the man behind the curtain because whatever the supervisor is, it may very well be a broken thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're just continuing to operate as functionaries to a machine that is without purpose.
Yeah. I mean, I'm getting big, this is probably a machine. A lot of people are speculating it's a long-lived species or whatever. I'm like, nobody keeps a society like this. I don't know, but you've watched Foundation, so maybe.
I didn't think about Foundation when it comes to this. I think that whatever this is at the end when it's revealed will give us more of a better understanding as to why it was all functioning, because they have done so much in this show of showing us how everything that they're showing us has meaning. Everything has meaning.
Everything has meaning.
Wim's mom being gone has meaning. Renaud's ghost has meaning.
Yeah. Everything is very thought out, which I appreciate, because then when you sort of are able to talk about the metaphor or the meaning behind things, it actually is legitimately there because they've thought about everything.
Yeah.
We cut back to the kids who have made it back to the ship and have the deactivated body of SM-33 tied up on a slab.
Using old-timey rope.
Using it. That was interesting. Normally, like, I would say like a cable maybe would have been more what I've thought of Star Wars, but they lean into the piratitude of everything.
The pirate ship of it.
But it is revealed as they turn him on that he is...
What do you want?
That he is the droid of Tech Renard, and this is the Onyx Cinder.
Yes.
Which is like the most perfect name. I love it so much.
Yes. It's reminiscent of the Black Pearl. It's got all of the things that you want from a pirate ship name.
Yep. A cinder, of course, being just ash.
Well, like a glowing ember.
But black.
Yeah.
And shiny, because that's what onyx is black and shiny. So cool. Black like my soul. But we get all of this backstory. It's like a backstory deluge, because now he has his memories back. He's very happy about that. And suddenly Jod is very interested in all of these things.
Yes. In a very new way. His personal interest has continued to grow and mount as this has moved along. He seemed like he's been very much just carried along for the first 4 episodes.
Yeah.
And attentive and caring and considerate and going back and getting the kids that are falling behind. This episode, he's letting the group be split.
Absolutely. And divided.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we hear about that the captain's lair, which has the coordinates to Aten in it.
Skull Ridge Mountain.
Skull Ridge Mountain. And he starts to tell all about the tale of the mutiny, of what happened. And it sounds like a sea tale. Like there was a mutiny and the second in command, he started to
first mate,
become suspicious, and then the captain was stabbed by his concubine. It's like, what's a concubine? I love that so much.
And we're done with story time.
But he still tells more about it.
And then he literally comes back and more story time happens.
Yeah, he comes back and he's like, more story time, all about Skull Ridge Mountain, all about all of the things in there, that there's the pits that hide the mangled corpses of his foes, and my home, the place of my assembly. I love this so much. It leans into my love of droids and my love of pirates so much.
It also is very reminiscent of Goonies, where Sean Astin's character is talking about One-Eyed Willie, and he knows the stories of One-Eyed Willie, and he's so invested in who One-Eyed Willie was and what One-Eyed Willie was seeking. And there's that moment in Goonies where he meets One-Eyed Willie, the eye patch is there, and he has a conversation with him. And while this, I don't think, will go to that end, it would be cool to see the kids talk to Renaud, like to the ghost, or see him.
Well, they did the hollow, so it was kind of like that. But we slow pan away from the storytelling.
Why do you think the hollow was flickering so much? Why did we never really get a feel for who Renaud was? So
I have a theory, which is that he's now running the supervisor situation. Like, he actually survived.
Oh, okay.
But we'll see. Like, somehow he survived. Because that would make sense if we didn't actually get to see him and he comes back.
That would be
appears,
that would be cool,
right? Long shot, I would say.
Yeah.
But we slow pan to Wim, who's Wims seems upset, and he's been upset sort of this whole tale. And he's crying in the hallway by himself. And Jod approaches and he's like, okay, I get a kid, He's like, all I wanted was a real adventure, but I'm never going to see my mom or my dad again. And he's like, you'll see your mom and dad again. He's like, no, my mom. He's like, oh no, I've opened a wound.
Yeah, there was such interesting emotional response on Jod's face when he turned back.
When he realized
and his shoulders slumped.
This kid has obviously lost his mom. So it's not that he can ever get her back, right? And it's really fascinating how this is sort of like a twisted version of what the Jedi intend, but often how you have no choice but to interpret that. If the Jedi say, like, you're not allowed to go home to your parents, you're not allowed to have attachments, and
it's the pirate life for you.
It's the pirate life for you. Exactly. So your fears, your anxieties, your parents, forget them.
Yeah.
They're attachments. Focus determines your reality, which is...
Your focus determines your reality.
Which is an Obi-Wan line originally.
No, it's a Qui-Gon line.
Is it?
Yeah, it's Qui-Gon. Qui-Gon says it to Anakin Skywalker.
I thought
your focus determines your reality.
I thought Obi-Wan said it originally in New Hope, but I could be wrong.
It's Qui-Gon saying it to Anakin in The Phantom Menace.
But Obi-Wan doesn't say it?
I don't recall ever a point where Obi-Wan says your focus determines your reality. It's a Qui-Gon thing, and also kind of leads Anakin to obsess over Padme, and then his focus becomes his reality as he falls into despair.
Fair. You have vision, embrace it.
Yep.
Make your life the one you want to live, which is entirely so Star Wars.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
Like, it's also not fair to ask a kid to be like, forget about your dad. Pirate life for you.
You have a vivid imagination. Just pretend a world where they don't exist.
Yeah.
That's a hard thing to ask of a child who's sad and alone. So it's interesting that he offers this, and it seems like he's connecting with him. Like he's empathizing with him, right? I lost my parents too. I got to forget them. Don't worry about it, kid. You can be like me.
But this is him telling his internal child this.
Exactly.
Like, there's something broken in Jod.
Yes.
Where you rely on gold instead of on connections and interconnections. And, like this is very much like the argument of like the dark side versus the light side, the greed versus like connecting with people. And that's where I've always I like the Jedi themselves and this like letting go of attachments. It's not quite how it ends up getting interpreted in our in all the stories. Yoda does say it correctly, but unfortunately the Jedi have taken it to dogmatic levels instead of living in the presence and appreciating the people, living in the present and appreciating the people that you love and valuing them, but not being afraid to let them go when it is their time to be let go.
Yeah.
Right.
And it also sucks that some of the main teachings we've had of a Jedi teaching a youngling what to do was all Qui-Gon teaching Anakin.
Yeah.
We don't really have a lot of teachings other than that. But a lot of the stuff that Qui-Gon said is kind of against the general Jedi dogma that, as you said, like when he says feel, don't think, use your instincts, that like Obi-Wan's like, what the hell are you talking about? Like that's, we're not supposed to feel.
Yeah, you're not supposed to just the feels. Well, no, and the entire Force is based on feelings.
Right.
Where I feel things and thus I destroy the galaxy. Well, you have to feel things and then also allow them to wash through you in a very Zen-like way. It's very based in Zen thinking. But it's interesting because then it's brought up as he uses the Force to grab the pad.
For the first time in a while.
In a little while, yeah.
And to jump ahead, this is the first of 5 times he uses the Force this episode.
Oh, he's going nuts with it.
He's just nonstop picking things up and pushing things around and grabbing things. But I note that's all he does. Not once is he swayed someone with the Force.
Yeah.
He hasn't
that we haven't seen on screen, right?
He hasn't twisted somebody's words or changed their motivations, because that guard was standing right there and told him, like, oh, from so and so, he could have said, I am this guy I am that gentleman you're looking for.
Yeah.
And waved his hand in front of him and made him go, oh yeah, sorry, my mistake.
I didn't recognize you or whatever. Yeah.
He could have done that, and yet he didn't. He chose to run.
So it seems very basic, his use of the Force, which makes it seem like maybe he was quite young or only has a very cursory knowledge of how to use his abilities. But Wim even questions this, is like, if you're not a real Jedi, how'd you do that?
Yeah.
It's like, okay. Yeah. He's carrying around this giant, in the Jungian sense of the word, shadow. We know he has a secret. He has a dark secret.
And I'm willing to bet it has something to do with his parents.
Interesting.
Because he tells us he had to forget his parents.
Yes. Yeah.
He had to move on from these attachments in order to survive, in order to live, in order to exist in a world. He had to move on from those things.
But yet he's trying to, in so many ways, reunite the kids with his parents so he can sort of like symbolically heal himself.
Right? Absolutely. Yes, I feel the same. And so I'm going to put out here, I don't like speculation, but I'm going to put it out here. I think that Jad Nanawood's parents were both Jedi that had fallen in love and fled the Order.
Oh my God.
And he's a child of 2 Jedi that were then culled in Order 66.
Okay, but
just putting it out there. Nobody else anywhere has said that.
I don't know what to do with this information because I really want it now. So thanks for that.
That's what I would like to see.
I want this story.
Yeah.
Jedi in love. But they are brought to Skull Mountain.
Skull Ridge Mountain,
which is also Lanupa.
I love that name. It is exactly the quintessential hand cream sort of like lotion sound. Like it is exactly what you would name a spa or a hand cream or anything that would be relaxing and enjoying. Now we're going to listen to the thematic dulcet tones of the steel drum performer Lanupa.
It's funny because like less than a couple of weeks ago, we were in New Zealand and they have these spas in New Zealand and the hot springs everywhere. We have hot springs in Canada where we live, and it is like a thing. You go to a spa and you go and hang out in the hot waters
or the muds
and you go and do this. And oft times, and this reminds me so much of when we went to the Caribbean, because we were in Providenciales.
Yep.
And we were right near where many pirates, Anne Bonny and Mary Read, used to hang out. We have seen places where they used to hang out, and it used to be this like place where they used to have like big barbecues for their crews and like go and see ships coming across, and then they would go and capture those ships and take all of the textiles and things that were shipping to the old world. But it's become like a luxury resort location.
Absolutely.
It just sort of reminded me of that, like how much
the Disneyfication of pirate strongholds.
Yes, exactly. Or just
so many of those things have become tourist destinations. Yeah.
No, you can go take a cruise. And I was shocked that there wasn't like, in addition to this, it's like, and here is the tour of the pirate caves.
Yes.
That would have been so funny. And having SM-33 like grumbling the whole time.
I liked that they didn't go that way, and they kept the secondary characters very secondary.
Yeah.
And kept the focus and the dialogue on our original characters by following the pipe.
Right, following the pipe.
Recognizing that the pipes were leading, especially from Fern, recognizing that the pipes were pulling from within the mountain. So if we find from where the pipes are pulling from, then we will get to where we're going. It was the kids coming to the realization of where they needed to go and how they needed to get there.
Absolutely. They arrive, they're told children aren't allowed.
Right? It's an adults only.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah. oftentimes that's the way it is.
Yeah, there's the adults only resort and there's the, family resort. Neither shall the two be interrupted. There's a great wall divide between them because what adults get up to in the adult resort is for adults.
Exactly.
But we don't see any of that in this, which is great.
Yeah, Jod has a plan. He's like, I need all your Old Republic credits. We're gonna get our way in here. This is a hot springs / mud retreat, and they are greeted by a hostess.
Yes.
Who's like, maybe we will need garbage removal.
Yes. I also love that how she just appeared to be bribable right from the get-go. Like you see her the very first moment. I'm like, oh yeah, you can bribe that lady. Yeah. That lady is totally in, like, she's not getting paid enough. She'll gladly skirt things for a couple of extra credits.
But he presents them as the wise old elders, and they're all dressed up like in the pirate gear that they found on the ship.
And it also seemed like the guards and the people with weapons and whatnot, the military folk that were keeping this place protected and safe, they seemed like plastic security. I never really felt, even upon seeing them for the first time when the two ships pull up beside, like, hey, no funny business here or we'll shoot you down. I was like, but will you?
Yeah. Yeah. Like
they didn't spend enough money on their security for this spa resort, pirate paradise.
No. And most people come here just to spa. Like they're not trying to find anything else. But I love how we get like these little vignette moments throughout the initial part of this, like with Jod like giving his knife and then
taking it back.
Yeah. Harsh but fair.
Right when he takes the drink.
When he takes the drink and gets the little like lay on his body, like on his shoulders.
I liked how all the kids were wearing the lays differently.
Yeah.
Like Fern was literally having it wrapped around beyond her shoulders. So it came across more like a off the shoulder thing.
Yeah. And then they put a restraining bolt on the droid. And I've never heard this explanation in Star Wars before. Droids have been used as weapons in the past. This bolt prevents all violence.
Yep.
I've never actually heard it said out loud before.
Yeah, that's true. They've been affixed. And when you first see them in A New Hope, when they get applied, you think it's because that it's going to keep them within range. Like it's going to restrain them from going too far away. That they'll be here where we need them.
Yeah.
They can't just wander off. And then as we've seen them develop over time, it's like, oh, okay, no, they're not just restraining them in a physical location.
This is because of the Clone Wars.
Yep.
And like bounty hunter droids and other things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know. I loved it. It was great. It added a lot. And then we get like these like little comments from 33. You can't even play a shanty on a harp. Where are the fighting pits?
Yeah.
So good. But you learn that why it's so busy and why there's so much security is that the banking clan is here for an economic summit and also to enjoy the baths. And this is where the bribery starts to happen.
Yes. But also it's really cool that they decide to make it the banking clan that's here. Yeah. And then reveal that it's a whole banking theme for the treasure itself.
Yes.
That it's a mint. And we find that out later, but they're priming us by having it be the banking clan.
Banking clan.
That is their little foreshadowing to say.
Money is important in the galaxy far, far away.
Yes.
And he's like, yeah, I'm Professor Gorlax, who's just on the list. And she seems super amenable. She's like, I don't care enough. We have this extra room, whatever. But enter Pocket.
Yes. Kelly MacDonald.
Yes. Who is, of course, known for her role as Merida, the voice of Merida.
She also played a really big character in Boardwalk Empire too, but go on.
And she was also, I think, in Train Spotting with Ewan McGregor.
Oh, neat.
So.
Well, she's phenomenal. And she gets to use her voice.
Her voice, which is so recognizable. as Merida. I was like, what are you doing? But her makeup and her contacts and her hair was super effective to be like, dang, you screwed this up, whatever.
Yeah. Whatever you were doing, Dash, you made a mistake.
Yep. Dash Zenton.
Yep. And then it also leads to the power of names.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of power in names, and Jod is very well aware of this. He makes sure that when they first meet, Neil introduces everybody and says, well, now we all know each other's names. Now we're not strangers.
Right.
Right. And so he is so quick to give his name, if it even is his name, because he's used so many different aliases that I'm wondering if Jod Na Nawud is even his real name. I'm getting the feeling that it is. That it was a moment of solitary reflection, that when he said who he was, that's genuine to who he was.
Because he's also talked about how lonely he is too. Yep. So we'll see. That's interesting. Because he definitely never uses the same name twice.
Nope.
But she explains how she's working for a private client and, you cannot trust this Slimo. And they say it way more times in this episode.
So many people say it this episode. We don't even talk to very many people, and everyone is saying, you can't trust that guy.
Yeah, exactly. But he's like, okay, I'm screwed now. So they go to the hotel room after finally bribing the lady with the amount of money they actually need to.
Wow.
And we know how much that is because it's a lot.
It's everything.
And Jod loses his cool.
Yeah.
And is like, no, we're all going to die. Don't you see this? Because the kids are just playing. They're jumping on the bed. They're goofing around. They're
staring out the window. Like,
I feel like this is our kids whenever we go to a hotel room. It's like, what are the amenities of this hotel room?
Our kids are always like running in, checking out the window and being like, this is so wizard.
Yeah, exactly. They definitely say that. I saw a meme that said, stop trying to make wizard happen.
It's totally happening, folks.
But I love that she used Slimo because we haven't heard that in a really long time.
No, not in forever. And it was great that she used it in such a great way too. Like, you can't trust this Slimo. Like, exactly the way that Anakin said it.
Yeah.
Now we're getting it again from an adult. And of course, anyone who was a kid when The Phantom Menace came out, they thought Slimo was cool. That was a good insult.
It's a good insult, yeah.
Adults hated it, right?
Yeah.
But kids loved it. And now we're watching this show. So everybody who was a kid for The Phantom Menace and is now an adult watching this with their kids,
they're like, yeah.
Those people are doubtlessly excited. And I'm excited for them because, like, that's a nice callback to something that we all appreciate.
Exactly. So they have a plan, which is that they're going to split up, divide the team to be able to find where the lair's entrance is.
Yeah. First of all, it really gave a good feel when he came in and he was like, no, we got to do this. And he like, it was like he ran in and he shut the blinds on the house and he's like turning the lights down. He's yelling at everybody, be quiet, because the bad guy's after us. The bad guy's following. We know the bad guys are coming now, right?
Yeah.
His panic has increased out of not only a concern for himself, but his concern for them.
Yeah. It definitely is a concern for them. And he gets the information out of 33 of the mark, the captain's mark.
Which is a great, cool mark.
I love it. It's a cool mark.
It's a great Talon sort of looking thing. But what's interesting to note is that his actions, which were supposed to be one of concern and one of, whoa, we need to be careful, come across in such an antagonistic way that it is the first mark for this episode that shows us that he is coming into conflict with the children.
Yeah.
He is no longer willing to let them be the director, be the leader, tell him what to do. He is now telling them what to do.
Because he also understands, like, if he gets killed, they'll be killed too, right?
Yeah.
I think. So they split up and SM-33 is with Fern and they're following the pipes.
Yep.
And there's this great moment just as this is happening, where you see a hut who's being delivered food by a little guy.
Yep.
And the hut like doesn't grab the food. He grabs the little guy and puts him in his mouth. And we cut away as that's happening. He's like, no, sir, not again.
So did he eat that guy?
Oh, totally.
Or and did that guy live? Was that not again about himself being, this is the second time you've eaten me?
Yes.
Or was this not again like you keep doing this to my people and now to me?
I get the impression that this little guy has a way to get out.
Okay, let's hope.
Because it's a kid's show.
That's my hope. And yet it's a kid's show, but we still see people die now.
Oh yeah, I know. I love how SM33 is like, we used to use these pets to kill people, and people are just having, and we do see the banking clan like kind of spread throughout. It is great. And then we have this. It
was also interesting to see Mon Calamar in the pits, in the mud, taking a relaxing time, and also have seen a Mon Calamar with behind Wemble working on at Atten. And so we're getting this commonality of race and image from the two different locations.
So they're going around and they're like, oh, the guards are looking at us. And there's a lot of stress around that. And they're kind of all investigating where they need to go. And we have a guard approach Jod.
Yes.
And he's like, Umayem Gorlax?
Professor?
And then he's like, Umayem Gorlax of Scipio. And I burst out laughing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I burst out laughing. You're like, what? And I'm like, Scipio is the home planet of the banking clan.
Yep.
And so if you're this guy, you must look like a banking clan guy, a Scipio person. And he does not.
No, he's not tall and thin, big, long head.
Yeah. And so I was like, and then when he said run, I was like howling.
It was so good. It was a really good moment.
Yeah. And yeah, so I was howling. It was great. We have Fern catching where the symbol is as they go into the darkness following the pipe. And we get presented with this thing that's in the mud pits underneath.
Cathalops.
But
that's not Fern. That's
Fern and Wim are down there.
Fern and I thought Wim. So
KB
and Neil
are with Jod. And SM33, Wim and Fern are down underneath.
Yeah. It is interesting that it gets split like that, where the boys don't get to go with the boys and the girls don't get to go with the girls.
Yeah, because, Wim and Neil really wanted to investigate the buffet.
Yes, but what this does is it allows them to then do their shtick, which was from the first episode of Jedi 1 and Jedi 2 radioing each other.
Yes.
And that was a great bit of levity using the walkie-talkies.
Yeah.
Like in each other's presence, not responding to each other, just basically telling them general things about what's going on around them. As kids would.
But KB and Jod and Neil are stuck. And so KB has the wrench and holds out the wrench with the security guard and sprays the security guards with mud. I loved it so much. This was perfect.
Such a great moment of inspiration.
Perfect shenanigans.
And like, even Jod looks at the wrench and chuckles like, I don't know what's going on here at all. And I don't believe anything's going to happen. But it just goes to show just how ingenious these four kids are and how much they take in of what's going on around them and are able to respond and react to save themselves.
Yeah. And Jod had KB like looking at the writing on the walls, which looked interesting. I couldn't tell, but it kind of looked like Macquarie font.
Yep.
But we cut to...
At the time of recording this, no one has translated the writing on the walls.
Yeah,
yet.
I haven't found it yet. Yeah. But we cut to SM33 gathering the rest of them to bring them to where Cathalops is. And we get a quick recap of what's going on through the walkie-talkie in the same room.
Yes.
He said he would help us if we entertain him. Over. Copy.
I also love the fact that it felt like a moment of danger. Cathalop's reared up. Jod's
with the
there.
Tentacles, yeah.
No, the kids are there. It seems like they found a symbol on the floor, and this spa denizen is big and dark, and we've just watched a hut eat someone.
Yeah.
They're literally giving us, and the motif of the music is like, uh-oh, danger, and they cut away, and when we cut back, everybody's hanging out, chatting and telling stories, and it warmed my heart so much.
I loved it.
I loved Cathalops that much more, and I want to see Giant Squid Walrus Man. I want to know what's going on with this guy. It
is so Star Wars because George loves to include tentacle monsters in his properties, and like it has become a thing. If you have a tentacle monster, it's Star Wars. But he opens up the door for them.
Yep.
And this is when the pirates arrive, and they shoot down the little like escort ships. They park badly, and they're generally just rude.
Absolutely.
And of course, Pocket is now hanging out with the pirates.
Yes, she has joined them.
Includes Gunter, who is, of course.
I thought it was a little weak on her part to, like, she's like, I've told you where they are. Give me my money. Well, you don't get your money until we get Jod. She's a bounty hunter that's now working for a private company and has climbed up out of the guild. I would think that she would say, no, you pay me what I'm owed now. And if you capture Jod, by all means, I'll gladly take the bonus because the puck says X. But I guess cut for time and whatnot, but it would have been an empowering moment for her against Brutus. Instead...
Yeah, it feels a little weak, yeah.
Especially now that she's with them, it feels like she's beholden to them to get paid, and I don't like that. I think that as a strong bounty hunter, she should have gotten paid in that moment. Well, why are you the why are you the credits? And if you wish to be, part of the capture... Like if they just include that, there's a bonus if you want to aid us in the capture. That would have been great. Because then it justifies her better being there later. But anyway, she's got a bone to pick with Jod. So
absolutely. So they go into the tunnels and SM33 is adding color and flavor, and it's like, be careful where you step. Everything is booby trapped, and we see like the decapitated skull and bones of a foe, and I'm like, oh, this is so smart when Jod and 33 duck and it goes over the kids' heads. God, I was dead. I was like, that was so good.
It was brilliant. I loved it so much. The four of them standing there, the laser just scorching the thing above their heads.
So good. And it leads them to an acid chamber. Where Jod's like, look for a lover, but they see the writing, and KB says, it says, all that enter paradise must make the greatest sacrifice. And she's like, life? Like, oh, perfect.
Which is perfect, right? Yeah. It made sense to me in the moment too. Like now one of these kids has to throw themselves into the acid to gain access for everybody else. It seems like such a great... It is exactly what that would be for that gain access, the riddle to enter the lair, speak friend and enter. It's all of that where you think it is so much more complicated and so much more diabolical than it actually is.
You have a lot to learn about pirates. And
there's the line.
Actually, it's the kids that reveal that it's the treasure, not Jod, because he was even like not thinking of that.
What's even better is there's a delay. There is just enough a delay when they're thinking it through that you as the viewer, the kid who's watching this, will go treasure, and then they say treasure. It makes you feel like you came up with it first while they gave you all of the clues for it.
Absolutely.
Brilliantly done. So well directed in that moment.
And Jod even seemed a little surprised by that answer, which is really good. And he uses the last of his credits been hanging on to, I guess,
with the force,
right, and pushes it into the acid.
The third time he's used the force, this episode,
and then he even like sort of like has this aside with Wim. It's like, what did I tell you about a real adventure? And it's just interesting because this is this is very much a Wim episode, even though they're doing so many other things, because we're very much focused on what Wim is learning during this episode, much like how the episode before was very much about Neil. But we enter the lair, which has a lot of like gold colors. You were like, oh, it's the Cave of Wonders.
Absolutely. It's the Cave of Wonders to a T.
I loved the giant like skull and then the throne that sits in front of it and all of this different like plundered things on different pedestals and everything. And John's like, look for a data port. It's like, what does a data port look like?
Touch nothing but the perfect roast.
Yes, but the perfect roast. But we do see Wim sees a lightsaber
on a pedestal.
And it's like gold and silver and
just
beautiful.
Like everything else in the room.
Yeah, but it very much reminded me of a High Republic.
Absolutely.
A lightsaber. Like the newer ones that we've been seeing coming out of the High Republic. But we haven't gotten a confirmation how old this is.
Right? How long ago was
this?
Was Renaud? How long ago did Captain Renaud did all of these events happen that has led to society at large saying stuff about Renaud's ghost?
Yeah. And also like
which also
Atten being like folklore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it leads me to also wonder, to your point about Renaud still being alive, and that's why we didn't see him fully there. He was blurry in an image, is because usually if there is a person's ghost running around doing stuff or making, unknowable things, that's actually just not a real ghost. That's just them faking their death and doing these other things.
Yeah.
So I am based on that and those two things, I think maybe we'll get to meet Renaud.
Like either he's like the somehow digitally the thing that's running it, so we have his ghost in the machine kind of idea, or he's still around.
Or he's still around, and he's the thing that like he, the kid. I need your help, kids, in the second season.
Yeah,
my concubines run off with.
Concubine stabbed him. Jod clarifies like, look for something like that's out of place, and immediately Neil says, well, all the food here is rotten and gone, but this roast looks like it just came out of the cooker. I love that line so much. It was so good.
It's such a good line. Two things. One, Neil's very observant.
Yep.
And bears witness to things. All the kids are very observant, but Neil's observant in this way. Also, Ortolans love food. And while they've gone on record to say he's not an Ortolan, he's just another elephant-looking creature. Ortolans love food, and he's the one who notices the food.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say it.
Well, and him and Wim have been constantly like buffet noodles. Yeah. Like all of that. Yeah. But it reveals they approach, there's a Chekhov's escape hatch that is revealed.
Right.
But Jaw's very careful. He's like, I'll do it. And he lifts it up and reveals the data port, which pops out of the ground and lights up, and it has has the sign, and we get all of this backstory about the captain's log and like at Atten, and we find out about what the treasure is, which of course is that at Atten is the last Old Republic mint.
Yep. Where they make the money.
And Neil's like, yeah, infinite money that way. Yeah, that makes sense. And
eternal
treasure. What did you think of the treasure?
I thought it was really well set up because it gives us an understanding of why there's a bunch of actuaries and why they're all data people on at Atten, because it's a mint. And so they need to understand, the economics of currency. And then also, the idea that if you steal the plates that print the money, you can just print your own money means so much. It's like a big robbery sort of thing. It's like a heist movie element. So you get that feeling again as well. And because these are actual silver dollars, these golden little these golden rectangles are something you would actually print and produce.
Yeah, and it also sort of, because they're like gold bars, it just sort of reminds me of doubloons a little bit more. So it leans into the part feel of
that
everything.
whole pieces of 8.
Yeah, exactly. Which you sort of had the symbols of on the walls, the sort of pieces of 8 symbols on the walls.
Yeah, there's been a lot of circular symbols in this too. I loved it. I thought it was great, that revelation.
Some people didn't like it. And I was like, but it, Star Wars always leans slightly sci-fi, even if it's mostly science fantasy. This has to be a realistic thing.
Let's be honest. I mean, I've watched a lot of Star Wars with you, and anytime they start talking about money and how money is made and where it comes from, it always seems like it's a fantastical perspective.
Yeah.
I don't honestly think the people who are writing these things know much about this.
Yeah.
Like the conversion to Imperial credits
that was so
went from
funny.
Rampart,
oh yeah,
and now here's the mint, and you can go steal all the money because it's literally. I get the feeling they give us an image of Fort Knox with a big, cube of data credits just sitting there under a cover waiting for the courier to come and pick it up. And no one has for hundreds of years.
Or thousands of years. Who knows? I also get the impression that maybe it has like a blockchain element to it or something like that. That's why they need so many people who are really good at math.
Yeah.
And then maybe they come up with new prime numbers or something like that.
They're doing the mining that's necessary to generate the coding for the crypto credits. Yeah. Could very well be
like that.
I mean, that's why they call them dataries, right?
Dataries, yeah. But we get this shot of Jod, so the reveal of the mint. We get the shot of Jod. He's facing away from them, and we have the skull in the background over his shoulder, and he turns around and the skull is directly behind him.
Yep. In the same way the supervisor's tower was behind Fern's mom.
Like this idea of death coming. And so he challenges Fern according to the code.
It's interesting to see him make the decision.
Yeah, there was a lot of moments there where he was thinking about it.
And you can see he's like, this is just going to be the cleanest and easiest way to go forward here.
Yeah.
Just yield. You're not the captain anymore.
I won't hurt you. But she tries to fight back. He uses the Force to grab the mace or whatever. In her.
Such a cool moment.
Oh, so cool. It's the 4th time.
Yep.
John, no! They're fighting, and Wim grabs the lightsaber out.
Oh my God, it's Broom Kid.
It was so good. And he turns it on, but it's facing down. And this is so good.
It's brilliant. It's everybody's everybody's had this moment when you're playing, right? Or the idea that you've got it turned the wrong way.
Yeah, and we used to play a lot of Star Wars role-playing games, and you always had a certain percentage chance, if you were not trained in the Force, to turn on the lightsaber and cut off a limb.
Yep.
And it was he stood kind of astride.
He had a great stance.
Great stance, and it turned on, and it was
right between his legs.
Yeah.
He threw it away from himself. Oh my God. And even Jod tried to warn him.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah. It's dangerous. And lightsabers themselves are always talismans, right?
Yeah.
So they represent power and the ability to sort of get your way.
Mm-hmm.
A lightsaber as well in Star Wars has taken on the symbology of representing the Jedi's life force. So this is this lightsaber is your life, and
it's the old Knight's code.
Yeah, exactly. This is the idea is that you have the power if you have the lightsaber. So it's not even the fact that he claims being a captain, but it's the fact that he is also able to claim the lightsaber as well.
Yeah.
But Fern yields, and he tells 33, who is now under his command,
because his code
is
the pirate code.
Is the pirate code. Yes, exactly.
I can't help it, Fern. I follow the pirate code.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't call her captain anymore. He called her Fern.
Yeah. And he apologizes to the kids.
Yeah.
He feels bad.
But even though he feels bad, he is still abhorred. He's still to the code.
Yeah.
And so if Jod ordered him to kill them, he would kill them.
Yeah. It's so piratey and Star Wars. It's really wonderful.
Yeah.
So he's like, capture them. They had murderous intent against their captain, mutinous intent against their captain, but they end up using the escape hatch or, booby trap.
So I've been racking my brain and doing Google searches since this, because this is a motif. It's not a genuine trope where you use the pitfall to escape.
Yeah.
Where they used, and it's almost Indiana Jones-esque, and there's a lot of Indiana Jones,
in this episode, yeah.
In this episode, there's a lot of like uncovering the Ark of the Covenant, going and finding the data pad, right? Going in there and doing this, and the whole Cave of Wonders, and all of the splendor and gold and whatnot is exactly like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
But I can't remember or find the moment. I think it's in the Temple of Doom, where there is that trap that had the dead skeleton in it, and they roll into it, Short Round and him or somebody else. There's an escape that's done into the trap itself to get away from the bad guys.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find the clip of it. I really wanted to find those moments, because this was a classic moment.
Yeah.
Where they showed us the escape.
They showed us the escape first, yeah.
And then they gathered the kids next to it, and Wim goes, wait, and lifts the chair, and pushes the chair down, and they all fall. And Jod's expression on his face is so complicated.
Yeah. And he grabs the lightsaber with the Force for the 5th time of using the Force this episode.
And turns, and we only hear the sound of it turning on and igniting as it goes to black.
Yep. There's a lot of things like mythic motif happening here. We think the treasure is whatever's in the room, but the treasure will be deeper for the kids. Yeah. It's going to be something about confidence and about them gaining in their own power. They had to go deeper into the darkness, into themselves, to learn more about themselves.
Yeah. And now Jod and SM-33 are alone.
Yeah.
It's just the two of them. The pirates outside have been, pushed away by the acid, if not some of them killed. I doubt any of the ones we know are dead. I think they got away.
I don't think Pocket will die, and I don't think Gunter will die.
I really want Pocket back in the next episode, because what a cool character.
Yeah, she would be great. I want, it almost feels like there's going to be a gathering of allies in some ways. We're going to see Kim again, and we're going to see Pocket again, and that would be really cool. But, this was episode 5 and there's 8 episodes. So there's still kind of probably going to be 2 more episodes of resolving this and
the journey.
Maybe getting back to Atten, and then the resolution of the return, right? So what happens at the end of Lord of the Rings once they return is they still have to fight for their home.
They still have to clean everything up.
Exactly. They have to bring back what they have learned along the way, which is something's not actually right with Atten. It has the opportunity to transform and change. And actually the stagnation was actually what was wrong.
Yeah. They're being cut off from the world, and now they're reconnecting the world to it. And so we will get to see that. And if the return doesn't happen until the final episode, then I'm going to say that it's a very long final episode, over an hour. It'll be over an hour, or the return will initiate in episode 7.
Right. Yeah.
And then we'll get 2 normal episodes. I just think that there's so much that still has left to be done.
Well, there's some sort of resolution that has to happen here where they have the opportunity to return.
Yep.
And then they will return and face the consequences of going home.
But we're left on such a high-level cliffhanger. We don't know what that pit leads to, where these kids go, that I really get the feeling that the next episode will give us a longer sense with the adults, because we did not get a very long scene with the adults.
No.
I feel there is a much longer scene to come with the adults, probably this next episode, because we're still so eager to find out what's going on with the kids. We want the next episode to start with them tumbling into wherever they're going to tumble into. Well, we don't need that. Like they can hold our interest by giving us the boring adult story, and then the kids tumble.
I live that every day. Come on.
Right? So give us the adult struggle, and when the adults finally reach their head, that's when the kids are going to tumble into wherever they're going to fall into.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I don't like going on these realms of speculation because it just leads me down ever more. And if it's not quite that, then I feel always a little disappointed that it didn't quite reach where I had thought it could go.
Yeah.
But if they tumble down that pit and they find Renaud, because he wasn't dead. He was stabbed by the concubine. They took his ship and they left. He wasn't on the ship. He programmed the ship to crash into the planet.
But he was on the ship when that happened.
But he wasn't.
Huh. Interesting.
So
I thought he was on the ship, but okay.
Yeah.
Either way.
I don't think he's on the ship. He was stabbed by his concubine, and they left. Like, he lost the duel because he got stabbed.
Yeah.
And he had his last laugh because he programmed the ship to crash into the planet and kill everybody.
I don't remember exactly what he said at that time.
Right?
We'll
so
see.
they find Renaud.
I hope that we see Renaud in future episodes, or at least more clearly, right?
Yeah, if it's a gathering of allies, they need an ally on the planet, and they don't have that right now other than Cathalops, and I don't think that's the person for them.
And they need a way to get home, right? Maybe Jod and SM33 leave and go themselves.
Yeah.
But they need a way to get home themselves, the kids. Yeah. I still think there's going to be some sort of resolution with Jod because he shows it was too much of a conflict for him to try and decide to do this.
Yeah. He kept going back for them.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he didn't know what the treasure was, so bringing the kids home would be a recompense of a fair reward, which is what Fern said. You bring us home, you'll get a fair reward.
Yeah.
Well, he's not getting that fair reward anymore.
No.
He's betrayed the children's trust, and at just at the time where he was finally earning it. Anything else?
No, I think that's everything. I'm really looking forward to next week's episode.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it too, but it also leads me to sadness. We are past the halfway mark. There's 3 episodes left, and I'm disappointed. Like, it's going to be a great story, and it's going to be a great show to come back to as well, in the same way that WandaVision has been a great show for me to go back to.
Yeah.
Because it's just so dense and rich, and there's so much going on, and they've given so much thought and attention to detail to not only the story, but the locations and the physicality of where they are.
It's just fun.
That too.
Well, Kyle, where can people find you if they're looking for you online?
As always, you can come find me on the Blue Sky, where I will send my little Blue Sky comments every now and again at Tavern Tales.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we will be back for another episode. Cheers. Thank you for listening to What the Force. I'm Marie-Claire Gould, your host. Our music is orchestral music by Christy Carew for What the Force. You can support the show directly on Patreon at patreon.com/whattheforce. We'd like to thank all our patrons, especially those who love and are obsessed with What the Force: Adrian, Sarah Joy, Scott, John, Sophie H., In Wild Space, Minky Moo, Derek C., How Rude, Neil, Christian Luca, Carly Ann, and Scott C. Support the show by wearing the Force with our merch. Like and subscribe on YouTube, or leave a 5-star review on iTunes or other pod apps. It helps people find the show. You can connect with us on Blue Sky at WT Force, What the Force Podcast on Facebook, or on our website, whattheforce.ca, or Discord. Links are in the liner notes. Feel free to reach out and start a conversation. Cheers.